And so now we're slapped with these 25% tariffs. Our exports to Canada over $1 billion. Our exports to Mexico for $1 billion. These are our friends. These are people who work with us. And you're going to hear from the commissioner, and you'll hear from Danny a little bit. He's thinking about this. Fertilizer, all of the other things. And I saw a CEO on this morning talking about food prices. You will see it within the next few days start to happen. That was not the promise. And so here in Minnesota, I think making sure that we're providing opportunities, we're opening up markets. I have to say, Commissioner Peterson and his vision for this, I see it everywhere. I hear it from people. When I'm somewhere on a trade mission, Tom Peterson has already been there and established relationships, and things are already happening. That's why looking and people say, well, why are we in Morocco? Why are we in Finland? Why are we here? Because we're opening these markets and opening up trade, which is always a good thing. And I would just close, for those who think we're going to win this and Canada's going to give in, that's a very simplistic way of looking about this, because the one thing that's going to happen if this thing goes on for any amount of time, these trading partners are going to look for other partners. They're going to look elsewhere. And we know we lost markets for our soybeans to China the last time we did this. They went to Brazil. They went to Argentina. They'll go somewhere else. And we have to be trusted trading partners, because folks are working too hard out here, producing what the world needs. We all benefit from this. And the idea, and again, we're just talking about this. I'm nervous about this, especially for our small producers, because we know when these things go bad and people have to sell, we get consolidations. Hell, I don't know, maybe the Trumps are into farming now and they just make a way to get cheap land. Who the hell knows? But I know it's not smart to put people in a position where this is totally avoidable. We'll continue to produce and feed the world, fuel the world, give them an opportunity. So here in Minnesota, we're going to continue to invest. We're going to continue to make the case. And the connection with the mayor talking about this with Cannon Falls and others, the ag community is the soul and the heart of the economic growth in these rural communities. If you lose your ag community, you get a consolidation. There's no need to have a furniture store in those communities. There's no need to have the school in those communities. And that's why we see a shrinking of rural populations when people choose, and you can see why standing here, why you'd want to live on this piece of property for 6 generations, because it's absolutely beautiful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ag Commissioner Peterson to give a few details on what these tariffs mean for Minnesota.
Well, thanks, Governor. Again, Tom Peterson. It's an honor to serve as Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and thank you to Danny and Mary. They're good friends. I talk to Danny and Mary often about different issues and things, so it's a really pleasure to have them host us on their farm here. You know, it's hard to say, you know, what to even say about tariffs. You know, I think we've seen this show before. You know, as we came in and took over in 2019, first thing I want to remember is people forget that we have a process in place. President Trump negotiated the USMCA, which took over for NAFTA. We have an agreement, a trade agreement in place that I would argue is working. We've had decisions both against Mexico and Canada that have ruled in our favor, that have opened up those negotiations. That's up for review in 2026. And so as we get into 2025, we should be working on that, not putting a tariff on our neighbors and our biggest customers. I always think about what business you're in, how you treat your customers. Our administration, we've worked on, as the governor said, building relationships. I've been in the room with the governor, both here and in Canada, when we're visiting with those, whether it's premiers or ministers, and opening those relationships, and that has benefited our state with a two-way trade. You look at Canada, for example, almost $1 billion a year just in agriculture going both ways. You think about corn that we sell there, our ethanol market is a burgeoning piece that's really opening up. I was at a plant in southwest Minnesota who was just working on signing their agreement to go into Canada. Now they're not sure what they're going to do. You look at our pork industry. Minnesota is the #2 pork industry or pork production in the country. We import almost 750,000 piglets or isoweens from Canada. That's also a biosecurity issue. There's a reason why we import is to bring those healthy piglets into our area. Very interdependent on that. And then as Danny mentioned, potash. Potash is a really important when we look at that value. When the Canadians, they've been putting a full court press on and sending people here. We had Minister Kading here from Saskatchewan. You know, what they tell us is, you know, not every farmer is going to see the impact of this right away. It'll depend on your operation. But with fuel and fertilizer, if you're in the pork industry, if you're exporting corn, you're going to see what they tell us, $4 to $8 an acre. That's real impacts on a time when, quite frankly, for the crop industry is not great. I look at the mediation reports that farmers get for January of 2025. We had 7 times more mediations sent to farmers than we did in January of 2024. I got an email this morning from one of the largest counties in the state, from their county USDA director, saying to get in now because the amount of loans and people trying to refinance debt is incredible, and that our staff is too busy right now. So we know that these tariffs are just not going to add are going to add a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty to our farmers. So I hope that as we work with the USDA, as we work with our congressional delegation, that calmer heads prevail and that we're able to get to this piece where we're negotiating and back to building relationships, because I think that that's what we feel works. So with that, I want to introduce Danny to say a few words too as well.
Why don't you tell the farm history?
So this is my family farm. It's been in our family now 159 years. Of course, it's when it was originally a farm, there was turkeys, chickens, pigs, dairy cattle, and then my dad, it was strictly dairy cattle, and then we had the dairy cattle when our kids were young, and then now we're down to corn and soybean crop farming. So it's gone from a diverse farm to more specialized with that. But
So I'll touch base a little bit, as the governor and Tom spoke about, was the fertilizer. Potash comes out of Canada. It's not produced here. Canadians can't come here and produce potash. There will be a tariff on it. That's going to affect. We need potash to raise healthier crops. And it doesn't matter if you're big, medium, or small. It is going to affect you. My cousin Stan is here. We're longtime relatives, and he can speak too about farming.
Well, I live on a farm. Danny and I share the same great-great-grandfather. The place I live on is just southeast of Cannon Falls. My great-grandpa bought that place in 1876 and has been in the Lundell family where I live since then, and it's been in continuous farming since then. I was a former dairy farmer until 8.5 years ago. Now I'm just crops and beef cattle. I have cow-calf operation and feed out some cattle. This tariffs, there's no winners in this as far as I can see. I don't see how you can hurt every sector of economy. It's not just going to be the ag community. Every sector of the economy is going to be affected by this, and inflict pain on everybody for what? That's not the solution.
A simple solution is be a good neighbor.
Yes.
I'm
Thank
taking
you,
that.
Governor.
I'm taking that line. So, well, I think you heard this. Look, this is totally avoidable. And if I had some advice on this one, President Trump can just claim victory. We'll create an award here and award it with him that he won the trade war. Good for you. But let us get back to the work of real economics, the growing of the food, making sure that we're innovating for the future. These communities, whether it's Cannon Falls or it's the state of Minnesota, or whether it's our country's depending on this, and this just makes no sense. And I think I would just close with that. Tom made the case of this. Donald Trump, when he was first president, had the opportunity to do this. He negotiated the trade deals, which he now says was terrible, and it should have never been signed. He signed it. He signed it. When you sign a contract with someone, your word matters. These are our neighbors. And so my word on this is Minnesota will keep doing what we do best. We'll continue to do what we can do to make sure that we're there to support our ag community, making sure that our budgets reflect that, and that these folks are able to do what they've done for nearly 160 years. With that, got some questions. Yeah, no, not yet. This one is a little bit troubling. I will say that because we do get a power, and these folks are talking about fuel, but electricity from Ontario. I do say this: we got a good relationship with Premier Ford. I was in his office last year, as Commissioner Peterson said. They agree with us, but we're working that right as we speak to see what that impact will be. Yes.
You mentioned trying to invest in the ag community just to make up for potential impacts of tariff. Maybe this is more of a Tom Peterson question,
Yeah.
but just looking into doing that, what are some of the ways you think are maybe highest priority when looking at?
Yeah, I'll let him. He's the expert. This is mine personally, though. The sustainable aviation fuel market, I'm telling you, is still one that we're innovating again, and that's an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, I feel like we've seen this show before, you know, and when we had this discussion before, a business person told me when you lose your big buckets, you got to fill a lot of smaller buckets. And so that's something that we've really worked on at our Department of Agriculture with help from the legislature, with support from the governor. We've expanded our trade office. We've expanded our missions that we take, and both inbound and outbound. So we, again, looking at, you know, other countries that we focus on, whether that's using the Port of Duluth, Morocco, Northeast Africa, Asia, but this may be the beginning of the tariffs. If you look at what President Trump's saying, Europe is next week, you know, and so you know, so as we look at that, that is our primary focus, though, is to continue that, but also to continue those talks with both Canada. We talked a lot about Canada, but Mexico is actually just ekes out Canada for our top export market. You know, with the corn, we're also #1 in turkeys. Most of our turkeys that we export go there. And so as we look at that, the one thing President Trump did say yesterday is farmers be prepared to do things domestically. And so that's always been a priority for our administration, is to add value to our crops. That's why we created an ethanol market here and have led that in Minnesota for the last almost 40 years. That's why, as the governor said, we're developing and leading the sustainable aviation hub. So we get up every day to try to boost those products and those commodity prices for our farmers. So that's just a few things that we'll be working on.
Yeah, well, this one's tough, and this goes back to the broader issues of whether you're talking Medicaid, you're talking school funding, the sheer scope of the federal government's investments, and even a state like Minnesota that's less dependent on the federal government than others. But this space of agriculture is very, very difficult. We're not even talking crop insurance yet, or what happens with the nutrition program. So I think our team has been for months now analyzing where all those impacts were. I think, as Commissioner Peterson said, though, continuing to make sure that we're diversifying what we're doing in the ag community, making sure that we're doing the things that allow these folks to have a market. But it's pretty tough on the scale that we're talking about. But what I would say, and I think this is where the legislature and all of us need to work together, with all this uncertainty federally, I think it behooves all of us to provide some calm and certainty here, to reach some compromises, to get along together, get things done on time. We don't want to add any more uncertainty, and I know there's been some of that to start this session. Seems like we're in a pretty good spot right now to get done and do some of that work. Pass the budgets. They need the budgets at ag to continue to do what they're doing.
Any indication as to whether we'll see tariffs reflected in this Thursday's forecast?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, likely not. And we also won't see, some of you saw the first quarter downturn is about a 7% flip from we were projected to be about 3% or 4% growth. Now we're going to see negative growth in this. That is an excellent question, and it's one that we will highlight on Thursday when we put out our numbers. It will not most likely be other than a few cautionaries from our folks and our economists. But I think from a legislative perspective and our perspective, I'll have a revised budget out in a few weeks after that. We need to take into consideration that the economic situation has changed dramatically, and by all indicators, pretty massive downturn. And
Are you going to be talking with lawmakers about how maybe they should expect that outlook to be
yeah,
worse?
yes, absolutely. I think realistically, I absolutely think we should. Well, look, we're still in a solid spot here. We still have historic rainy day funds. We've got $2 billion surplus on the bottom line, even after we do the budget. But I do think now that was predicated on a growth outline that was still really good, a growth horizon. That is no longer there, and the uncertainty is there. So I think it's irresponsible of us not to take that into consideration. It'll just be a bit hazy at this point because we're not going to have those indicators, but we'll start to see this develop over the next I think several weeks. About give us a better idea.
Absolutely not. He is ruled by chaos. He creates a lot of chaos, uncertainty. In the farming ag community, there's a lot of nervousness going on right now.
Didn't hear exactly what was the question?
I was just asking your response to the president's post saying that we should focus on selling domestically.
Enjoy yourselves.
Have fun.
Well, it's not realistic. We're a global economy. I mean, you can't just focus on interior in the U.S. only. That's just not realistic in today's world.
And to govern by might should not happen. Do it through diplomacy, negotiate, work with our neighbors.
Especially since we already had the trade agreement
Yep.
in place yet till 2026. That's what's like, he's just like reneged on that, and that's just not good at all.
That's an important spot.
I would just add that there's not enough market domestically to everything we produce is way far outseeds what the domestic market could handle.
Yeah,
That's right.
and that's why we're a global market now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming out. My PSA is drive safely. We're going to see some weather, sounds like, coming in, and that road can get a little slick. With these folks step away, I'd be glad to take some off topic if anybody had something.
Governor, can you talk about your potential 2028 presidential run?
Yeah, look, that was a 45-minute interview where I said, look, it's too early to talk about that. Who knows? I'm focused here. I've said that before. I can't say anything with a national press where it's the focus on that, and I don't blame them, but I just want to be clear. We're focusing here. I told you, and I'm still this. I think my decision is if we're in a good spot and we're leading in a way that Minnesotans want to see forward, then we would talk about this race. But that one was 2 seconds out of a 45-minute interview.
Are you saying it was out of context?
No, it wasn't out of context. What I said was, look, it's too early to tell, and if I have the skill set necessary, sure, I would take a look at that. That didn't say I would do that. I said I would take a look at it. So it wasn't out of context, but in the context of the bigger interview, we were focused on the things we're doing here, focusing on improving lives, focusing on making our politics work better. So.
There was a bill yesterday in front of the House that dealt with banning transgender athletes from women's sports. There was a rally on the Capitol steps. Any
Yeah.
comments on
Yeah, no, I'm not taking the on that. Look, we're talking tariffs today. We've got big things to do. I get it that this is about trying to demonize, trying to do that. That's what they're focused on. I guarantee you that no one is talking about that here. No one is focused on the bigger issues on it. And I would just encourage them, move on. You know, remember when it was always critical race theory. Now they forgot about that. Now it's this. Now it's the next thing. Folks want to know the economics. Day one, prices were going to come down. That was a lie. That was a lie, and we need to be held accountable for that. And again, you heard it here. This guy negotiated a trade deal, now tries to break it to create this chaos. Don't take the bait on that.
Dana, last one.
Yeah.
Today about wanting to go out to districts where congressmen and women are not doing town halls.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you?
It matters to me because some of you remember this. We hold open forums. We have people out there. And when I was a member of Congress, town halls around the ACA, and we did those. I said now to try and tell people that no one voted for this stuff. No one wanted these tariffs. And now this is happening, so people are showing up. And I don't know if you saw it. Oh, these are paid actors driving Mercedes from the cities. That dude was from Kansas, and he was a veteran who lived there his whole life. I can tell you that. And they were simply asking him questions. So what they're going to do now is try and pretend that they don't have to hear where the public's coming from. You told us what you were going to do, and those things aren't happening. And I just said, if they don't want to do it, I'll do it, and talk to them if that's what it takes. I would hope they would get out there and talk to folks. Thanks for coming out here. Drive safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.